First, I would like to congratulate the representative of Vietnam on the very impressive data on trade relations and economy. That's really what many countries would wish to have. Let's face it, let's get to the reality in other parts of the world, and considering this, I would say this is really impressive. Congratulations to this. And of course, we are particularly happy that you put this particular emphasis on the trade relation between Vietnam and Switzerland, which is also a consideration of Switzerland, of course. And to get in our topic, which is procurement, which is supply chains, which is textiles, let's get one step forward. What was really interesting when hearing your presentation, that what you measured are the classical success factors of economy. And you presented this in a really interesting way. What we need now, in addition to this, is data on measuring carbon footprint, sustainability impact. So what we need in Switzerland and in Vietnam are data on our success on mitigation of climate change, on changing behavior of the enterprises, and change in the supply chain. Let's face it, this will not be an easy task. The Swiss administration doesn't like monitoring and reporting, but we will force them to deliver data and monitoring possibilities and measure them. And let's sincerely hope that Switzerland will be able, when giving such a presentation next time, not only to present economic data, but also credible data on sustainability in public supply chains. That's what gives the credibility to the Swiss position to this. Now, our moderator indicated we have a real paradigm change in Switzerland in favor of sustainability, and this is the reform of our legal framework on public procurement. So every supply chain management of public entities on federal level, cantons and municipalities will change according to that law for different reasons. The first reason is that despite the resistance of the Swiss Federation of Economy, which is Economie Suisse, they hated the idea to see sustainability to become aim and purpose of the law. And despite that resistance of Economie Suisse, we put sustainability in Article 2 of the new law as aim and purpose of it. And this is really amazing. That's for Switzerland not self-evident to throw away the resistance of Economie Suisse and to go for a change despite the resistance of the economy. And that's the interesting point. So the politicians said, we want to have a real game change experience. So we have a new aim and purpose of the law, sustainability. What we have in addition to this, and this is also important to note, is that we will go for the future, not for the economically most advantageous offer, which is normally perceived by neoliberals as the cheapest one, but we will go for the most advantageous offer, which means the best price-quality ratio, and quality is more important than price. So this is not what the SECO told us when we discussed the last version of the Public Procurement Code 20 years ago. So this is a clear paradigm change. And this paradigm change is wanted by the economy in Switzerland on the construction side because they deliver in quality. And if you ask only for competition based on price, then also the Swiss enterprises don't get what they want. And according to this, they made, against Economie Suisse, our construction sector, made the change possible. Isn't this really interesting? So, what we have is sustainability as aim and purpose of the law. What we have is the most advantageous tender as a formula to get the award, where if you are a supplier, the most advantageous tender. And the third part of the story is a kind of an anti-dumping bathtub, you know? Inside the bathtub, you select your criteria, you define how important quality or price should be, but underneath, you need to have a bathtub fixing the minimum conditions, that there is no dumping at the cost of social or environmental minimum standards. And that's the third thing we have achieved during that reform. This means if ecological minimum standards are not upheld, you're out as a bidder. If social minimum standards are not respected, you're out as a bidder. And the third thing, if you as a supplier, you offer something for a very low price, then you are asked, and the public entity is obliged to ask you, how can you possibly do it for that price? And that's the third game changer, this anti-dumping bathtub. So we have aim and purpose sustainability, we have the award formula, the most advantageous tender, which means competition based on quality, and third of it, we have this anti-dumping bathtub to exclude dumping at the cost of minimum standards. And these three things together will change our world in terms of public procurement. What does this mean for textiles? Some people imagine that textile procurement for public entities is not so important. It's about uniform, it's about boots for the army, but this isn't true. We have in every home for elderly people, in every hospitals, we have enormous amounts of textiles. And imagine every train or every tram you're riding in, normally you have functional textiles you're sitting on, and it's enormous, the amount of textile we are using every day without even noticing. And that's the interesting part of it. It's really important. So textile sector means a lot, not only to Vietnam, obviously, but also to public procurement in Switzerland. This is really a lever if you want to change something for the future. How can this be effective in our economic context? When I acted as a moderator for a panel at the Climate Summit in Glasgow on supply chains, obviously, we agreed that there are 4 really important factors if we want to change the world in terms of climate change mitigation. This is development aid, trade law, all trade law, the clauses in the trade agreements in favor of sustainability. There is how big money is invested, green finance, and the fourth of the levers to change the world are supply chains. And supply chains, this doesn't only mean public supply chains, but also supply chains of private firms, enterprises. And our buying behavior, of course, is also included. And the idea of it is that we make a step forward in public procurement for decent supply chains. We can afterwards say, if this works for the public sector, the enterprises can do the same thing if they really want to. And that's the idea. We had a vote in Switzerland on how far should we go when holding enterprises accountable or responsible for their behavior abroad? And what I tell you is that one really good lever is to force your politicians back home to be a real role model when buying for each municipality, canton, and on federal level. And if you convince your politicians to do that, then afterwards you can tell enterprises, if even our politicians are capable of doing this, then enterprises should be too. And that's the basic signal that's sent by the reform of the legal framework on public procurement in Switzerland. This was an absolutely spectacular success, but unfortunately, this is not really noticed by the broad public because it's considered to be a technocrat's matter. It couldn't be more false. Public procurement is such a political lever that you never can describe it as a technocrat's matter. It's something being of importance for every one of us and the society as a whole. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark Steiner. Thank you for your vision and the motivation that always kicks off and inspires us. So we will continue and going, not only talking, but also doing the walk and hearing how small companies, startups, city representatives, and some of our Vietnamese friends do this, put this to practice. And so I'd like to invite Sonja Gehrig, I'd like to invite Didem Delarus, Dini van Heuvel, and Patrick Roth. Are you there? Patrick Roth is there. A special thanks for you also for sponsoring part of the Vietnamese delegation. So please come on stage for our next panel. And please, viewers, stay with us. After this panel talk, there will be drinks and a lot of occasions for networking. Isabelle Dacre is a specialist in certification. She works for Max Havelaar, but has also very broad knowledge on sustainable textiles. Tuan An Phang is also an expert in certification from the also public sector. Mark, sorry, you have to come up again. We need you. And I'm going to get one more chair while you get...
That's yours, isn't it?
It's yours, if you're willing to pass it on. And Dida, can I come between you? So again, we have these different roles. We have producers, we have buyers, we have certifiers. Over here is our certification expert group. And here it's a little mixed, a producer or you will tell yourself, also in the textile industry. Sonja Gehrig from Zurich. And you're not startups anymore, you're already successful business enterprises that have made marks in Switzerland, in Turkey also, Portugal, very international, always in the textile industry. And Didi knows the situation in the Netherlands well, but travels a lot, and we've had the occasion to hear how she inspires people in India and other countries. And now I have to take a look, sorry. Lin Tan, you're representing a manufacturing site, and I was really impressed talking to the CEO, who you must visit because she talks about rami, a very sustainable and fiber made of practically wood that grows, or a kind of wood, something between wood and nettles. Very fascinating and on big scale, bigger scale than what we're working on. Mark, you've already heard, so I won't introduce you now anymore. What does your work look like? What is a good day for you? And does what you're wearing reflect your view on sustainability? Didi, can I ask you first?
Sure, thank you for inviting me. So my name is Dini. I am the creative director of Infantin Victoria. It's a children's brand, and I teach sustainable fashion design in Paris and in Geneva. So I'm very attached to Switzerland, and I follow closely what happens here. My origin is Holland. So what my perfect day looks like is, I got this question, I found it fascinating because I started realizing that my day probably looks nothing alike from one day to another. I'm very happy when there's a new idea that pops up, or when I see things around me that are changing. I find fashion for the moment extremely exciting because sustainability is finally really catching on. We've been doing this for 10 years with the brand, and I've been doing it way longer than that. And every day today you discover new things, and I think that makes my perfect day.
Hello, I'm Didem Rai de Latour, founder of Exquisite Design and ecologisch B2B sustainable textile production company. So for me, a good day that I create new collections which are skin and environmentally friendly as well as fair. And also I win new customers, B2C and B2B, who respect nature and workers. Yeah.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Linh Tran, and on the way from Vietnam. I represent Bring Textile, which is a big woven factory in the north of Vietnam, one of the biggest in woven industry in Vietnam at the moment. And talking about, first of all, what do I wear today and what is a perfect day? I actually wear cotton and some velvet, which is made from viscose and silk. So all natural products. So of course, talk about sustainability, I think is a big picture. A very small part of it is about the materials, but the much bigger picture is actually about the state of mind, about saving the resources, minimize waste, and being efficient in everything we do. So my jeans is about 10 years old, my jacket is about 5-6 years old, and I like to wear them multiple times. So for me, a perfect day at the factory is when I see the productivity hits 99%. But unfortunately, I don't get that very often. So to be honest, I'm very happy when I don't see waste. The natural material is already a given. But how do we utilize every single resources, time, money-wise, energy, even relationship, in the best manner that we can, would make my day. So yeah, I'm waiting for one day when I see 100% efficiency. And when there is no arguing in the factory, there's no conflicts in the office, that will be my perfect day. But otherwise, every day is a good day. Thank you.
Mark, will you? Sorry.
No, I have this one. Does this work?
Yes.
Okay. So when it's about the clothing, so this is pure cotton, and they wear this for years. It's very comparable, so the idea, but not necessarily labeled for sustainability. That's not a topic, only the underwear is. But now let's discuss the what could be a good day. In my life, I got aware that I had to reinvent myself several times. I started as a lawyer, then I got aware that I need to integrate economics if I want to be successful when develop my thinking. And the third new path to get through was to get familiar with politics. And the fourth now is to discuss soft skills for behavior change in public sector. So each time I had to reinvent myself, to integrate the broader view. And each time if I had the feeling that now I'm more or less there where I got ready to discuss the new aspect of the thinking, then I got something like a lucky day, because I felt now I'm really ready to respond to the needs of the people discussing our common topic.
So a little like Dini, you want new sparks every day to a certain extent, and the relationships a little bit like Lynn, not only efficient 100% running, but you need to develop, or you see the need also to develop these skills. And so Sonja, she came not from Vietnam but from Scandinavia, one day early from vacation. So thanks very, very much for this special effort. And yes, what does your perfect day look like?
Thank you. Not by flying.
No, by
actually.
Train. 27 hours, a good example, of course.
Thank you for having me here. Anyway, I'm wearing a fair trade clothes and partly organic as well. This is cotton and linen, and yes, so this is important for me as well. When it comes to my daily work, none of the days are similar as the other ones. So my work is, or I'm happy if I can go forward with the sustainable mission.
And she has a lot of impact in Zurich.
For the city of Zurich, thank you. And for example, consult and support the buyers, the procurers in their daily work, or bring strategies forward, like I'm working or coordinating the circular economy strategy of the city right now, and also bring pilot projects forward. So this means a lot of stakeholder management, actually, and I'm happy if we go a step forward. Yeah.
Stakeholder management, is this what we're doing here? We're getting people together, or it's more management, what you do? Can you give one example?
I mean, within the city, I need to convince people as well. It's not just telling they need to know why and how they do it. Mm-hmm. And if they understand, only if they understand why and why it's necessary, they will actually do it then. So it's a lot of convincement, mm-hmm. and also work on, like on the legal side, to go a step forward, that we have mandatory rules and so on. It's from different sides, the different approaches, actually.
Okay, thank you. What colors are you wearing today?
Most
are
of
they
them
certified?
Yes, they are, because I look when I buy my clothes that they have labels on it, that they are certified, and as much as possible to buy them. Yeah.
I just jumped to your profession, but tell us a little more, or tell our viewers a little more about what you do.
Good. My name is Patrick Roth. I'm head of marketing at Bommler, a company that is about color management. Bommler is about transparency and supply chain, so transparent supply chain. I think this is something really important today, that we have a look on them, that everyone knows where you buy the stuff, where are the suppliers, etc., and all the certificates that are on that clothes or whatever it is. It could be also food or whatever. I think consumers want to know more about that. This is just a fact, but it's now up to the brands to go the next step for that.
Thank you. Can you pass on to Isabel?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Isabel Deke. I work with a company, Fairtrade, the international organization, in the Zurich office. I work in the product licensing department. I work there because I feel very good about spending my time working for a company, a global company that's promoting fair trade, promoting fair payment to the farmers and producers in the global south. I work there part-time because I also want to spend some of my spare time in activism. I support Fashion Revolution, Public Eye with the Clean Clothes campaign, and many other climate groups locally and globally. And I'm wearing, today I have brought my 20-year-old bag, and I'm wearing a dress by a local brand, a local label, that I know the designer. And it's not certified. She's a startup. But I trust her that she does a lot of research and she's in close contact with all her sources. The reason I brought these two items is to demonstrate that the thinking that we have to reduce our consumption, that's the most sustainable thing we all can do, that we wear things longer, like we wear our clothing and our accessories longer than the 5 to 7 times that people that nowadays wear on average their clothing. 5 times and then it's thrown away. So that's one, the sufficiency, reduction of consumption, wearing things longer, and if you buy something new that is not made of new resourcing, new materials, it's made of recycled textile waste, textiles, not from PET bottles, because we need to close a loop in textiles so that the clothing that is worn and is finished can be recycled into new clothing. That's closing the loop. So I've done enough talking now. I'm getting carried away, and I'm very happy to pass on to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Just to say, every day we're also showing initiatives about reusing and sufficiency. Later this afternoon, you will get to know. Maybe you've already seen them. Clothing loops is an interesting project. One of many attempts to get people to reuse things in a creative way. So we try to keep a balance at Gwand, showing new textiles, but also showing the sufficient approaches. So, you've been very supportive. Thank you so much for coming, and tell us about your expertise and what you think about certification, why they're important. Maybe also what you're wearing.
I see. Hello, everybody. My name is Tonang. I'm a co-founder of the project called Green and Sustainable Community. We not dealing directly with the fashion industry, but we're dealing with the environmental of the factory, especially the one with the textile and garment factory. And regarding to the one I wear today, you know, as I'm not a fan of fashion, this one is, I think, is a recycled rubber from Canadian brand, native, and I believe that is 95% of the rubber will be recycled. And we traveling from Vietnam to here with Traveleye, and this vest actually 12 years old, and it's actually from my wedding vest.
Oh.
So it's Tyler in Vietnam, and that's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've already heard a little bit about sustainable supply chains, or how you choose your clothes. Lots of you look at the labels, look at the, maybe they're not certified, but you want to know who it is and what the materials are. We heard that you insist on natural materials, and you like them to be long-living. So can you give an example of how you've managed to improve sustainability in your supply chain? Now that will be different. You will have your direct supply chains. You're a buyer, so you're in another role. Sonia, can I give you the mic?
When it comes to slow fashion, I think it's very important that we think globally, but also act locally. And we try to do this as a city as well, and we try to bring the citizens to do it as well. As a city, we have three approaches. The first is like sustainable procurement. We are a buyer. We try to to look at the whole supply chain, actually, when it comes to textiles, and also set minimum requirements and good or a lot of award criteria. The second approach is our net zero target we have for the city. We have also a target for the indirect carbon emissions, which is not the usual case. This means our indirect carbon emission target means we want to bring down the emissions, which is comes to the products through the production from produced in other countries, not in other cities, not in Zurich itself. We want to bring it down by 30% by 2035 for the whole city, and for the government until 2030. And for the third approach, may I just shortly? It's like the circular economy strategy, and there it's actually what you said before, like try to prolong the life of the products, lifespan of products, and not to consume so many new fibers, but to share, to recycle, to repair, to buy secondhand and so on. This is the third approach.
Excellent. I just wanted to get in there. We've been hearing different numbers, and I was very happy to hear that Vietnam is also going for a net zero approach to 2030. Did I hear that correct? Sorry, 2050 as a nation. That's a big goal. We heard from Luzern yesterday. I was surprised, 2030, but I think it's not as broad as the Zurich approach. And yes, I think we need a little competition there, and because it's necessary and fast, and then it obviously has to be realistic. But let me get back to the producers. Your supply chain, how do you manage to keep improving them?
So when we started, we decided the company would be vegan and organic, and so we have chosen our certifications that we, first of all, really dug into what they mean. And then we started really discussing with our suppliers, how can we help them to become certified? We have selected manufacturers that were certified, and simultaneously on all of our products, we have tried to communicate all of this transparency as much as we can. So on every label, there is QR codes where you can see full traceability, who made it, with the name of the manufacturer. So anybody who wants to call my bluff and check who made it, you can just scan it and see directly which company, where they are, how many people they have, and you can do your own research. And we think this is one of the ways of putting yourself out there. We try to be as transparent as we can so people can really call us out if there's a problem, and we constantly check up on everybody we work with. We try to, we consider them our extended family. We think the world is almost like a global village, and we really work very closely with them. We have umbrellaed one of the factories in Germany to make them GOTS certified under our umbrella, so that we really know exactly how they do things. So we're working a lot of different angles at the same time, but we try to educate and critically question everything we do.
A really good example, and also a very interesting case study, and I hear that you will be coming out with a book, so they already have a wonderful film for children to learn, and now for the grown-ups, there's also a lot to read soon. We'll hear about that tomorrow. Didem, supply chain, how do you deal with it? I know she's very strict.
Yeah.
So tell us, how do you manage?
Yeah, because I worked in textile companies. So it was for me important to choose some certificates if I want my own company. I worked many years in textile production company, and in that time it was I think 29 years ago maybe. Sustainability, it was very not so common as now, but I was lucky that, that we have some brands, as I think I can say some brands names.
Please do so.
Seidensticker, Olymp, or Lacoste. We produce lots of million meters, and they want to have their fabric with Ecotech certificate. So I had experience with Ecotech certificate and organic cotton and goods. So for me, it was most 2 certificates if I want my own company. So GOTS and Ecotech's 100 standards. Other certificates will be used if needed. So, for example, fairware. We produce, of course, fair, but the certification is very, it's not so easy way for producer. So maybe to understand what GOTS and Ecotechs really mean, I try to explain them simple from their webpage. So GOTS mean Global Organic Textile Standard. Shortly means ecology and social responsibility. Standard says GOTS is the worldwide leading textile processing standard for organic fibers, including ecological and social criteria, not only natural materials, and also social criteria, backed up by independent certification of the entire textile supply chain. So it's very important for me. And maybe just shortly, Ecotech standards. For what does the label mean? If a textile article carries the standard 100 label, you can be certain that every component of this article, every thread, button, and other accessories has been tested for harmful substances, and that the article therefore is harmless for human health. It's for me the most important thing, yeah.
So we've heard now, or you're getting a picture that there are many different kinds of certificates. We keep hearing GOTS. It's a very solid, I would say, and strict, it goes along the whole supply chain, and it covers different. We keep hearing Ecotechs, which is about
finishing
just
department,
the finishing, yeah. And maybe goes into your field with the color and the quality of the color. And so I'm curious, Lynn, you are in the supply chain, not at the beginning, because you also buy your material. How do you deal? Do you have national standards? How do you deal with these issues?
Bring Textile is actually a part of an integrated supply chain. So we make our own yarn, from spinning to weaving to dyeing, finishing, and to garments, and now to brandings. So it's actually the full supply chain. Talk about certificates, as Diane said, you know, all of the buyers come to us with a list, and we satisfy them all. And to be honest, to satisfy the certificates, they are not that difficult. Because if you're serious in the business, if you invest in the right way, you satisfy them all. It just costs money and time. But then after you get the certification, or the certifications, what's next, right? Because the certificate, people only come and auditing you 1 or twice a year. And after that, what do you do for the rest of the time? To me, that is just the beginning of it. Of course, any serious business, and in Vietnam, we are one of the very, very serious. Vietnam now is the second biggest in the world in terms of textile. And in order for us to become relatively unknown 10 years ago, and now we're the second in the world, just after Bangladesh, we got to do things right. So doing things right is just not to get the certificates, but it's in what we do as well. So I would like to give a very, I think it's a good example. When the customers come and visit our factory, we give them fruits. And then we tell them these fruits growing in our garden, in our industrial zone, that is used, our water being after the treated, you know, the wastewater treatment in our dye house, going through 3 or 4 filters to the drinkable level, And then we use it to water our plant, and we actually eat the own vegetable, and we put the fruits on the table. So
Wow.
it's up to you whether you're going to eat it or not, but I will eat it.
Wow, wow,
So
wow.
yeah, for me that is more real, you know. So certificate, yes, is one thing. We definitely have to be there. We have to do that. We have to, because in the global world, in order to be on an international supply chain, we have to give all of that. We go a bit beyond that. Yeah, and I'm proud to say
That's
it.
wonderful. So
Thank you.
In a nutshell, you're saying that what Didem said is important, your health.
Yeah.
You're applying it for your own supply chain, even the water and the air, and you trust your own.
Yeah.
You trust your own production in such a way that you eat the fruits of it. That's a really nice example.
Because we have our own wastewater treatment in the industrial zone, and the regulations in Vietnam is very strict. The water, after treated, it has to be in a level of drinkable water. So if it's drinkable and if we trust ourselves, why don't we just water our plant and eat the fruits, you know? That's the best way to talk about sustainability.
Maybe we need in the future certificate of fruit-friendly or food-friendly. So, you want to say something? And then
I don't have supply chains in a narrow sense of a term because I'm dealing with the appeals against the award decisions. So it's a little bit more technical. But
you have paper, don't you?
Yes, and this is certified. The paper of the court is certified. No, but kidding aside, the problem is that we have to pass the message how gigantic the changes we are facing in the behavior on the demand side, especially when it comes to public entities. These days, our defense ministry, that's definitely not the most progressive people in the world. Our defense ministry says that we will put a standard GOTS for every uniform of those replacing their military service with some activities in elderly people's home or everything else. So they have a separate uniform for doing that service, which is GOTS certified. I mean, 10 years ago, this would have been strictly unthinkable. And if you consider those people doing those steps, I mean, this means something, isn't it?
That's amazing. I taught parts of the army 20 years ago about sustainability, so I'm going to take a tiny, tiny little bit of credit for that, no? But most of it goes to you. You want to continue?
Well, I just want to say I find it amazing. In Holland and in Belgium, if you want to win public procurement, there is sustainability. That is one of the criteria. But if you really dig into the nitty-gritty, it accounts for 5 to 15% of the weight of the ballot. So you never win if you're the most sustainable. It always ends up coming down to the economy. So.
Okay, so that's a pass to our procurement person who does apply the laws that you helped develop. We have all these different labels. How do you deal with all these certificates? Because you have to make choices that other people that are really accountable.
Yeah, this is a big challenge, I think, for all the procurers. There's so many different labels, certificates, and so on in the textile sectors. So we don't choose this and this label because then I think it's kind of unfair if other producers are as good as some, but they don't have these exact labels. So we choose the criteria behind the labels. So we have a whole list of criteria, and first of all, we have like the minimum requirements for the textiles. For example, they have to show us the supply chain. They have to make it transparent, for example.
But you don't go and eat fruits in the factory. How do you do that?
No, we don't do that yet. No. This would be the next big step for us. But we have a tool like the textile calculator, and this the bidders, the suppliers, they have to fill it out or in and say which labels, criteria they have. So if they have like GOTS and fair wear or so, they get points already at many of the criteria, so they don't have to fill it in. But there could be other labels as well for the same criteria, but some labels are not as good as the other ones, or not as, the audit is not as strong, or so we try to make it transparent and for us to make it work in a way to be fair to the different suppliers. And at the top of that, we underlined a carbon calculator, or which counts for this exact textile the carbon emissions. So we can compare the carbon emissions as well.
And you've developed that yourself to a certain extent. So the carbon calculator, you've developed that.
Or we have it developed.
Yeah, you had it, okay.
with those companies.
Are we missing an important certification? Don't come with a list of 100, but maybe one or two more.
No, maybe just to say, as you said, there are lots of labels. It's even for the manufacturers, it's a huge amount of labels to go through. And it's even worse for the consumers. So we mentioned already quite a few labels. There is some information on the tables next to the entrance where you can inform yourself on all the different labels and what they mean. There's also an app in Switzerland called labelinfo.ch where you can actually see labels for textiles, labels for food and for many other categories. So to try and get to understand the different labels. And yes, we have mentioned many labels. And as you said, the labels is one thing, but implementing and doing it the rest of the time when the auditors have gone away, that is the major importance here. There are labels we haven't mentioned, which I would like to mention. Like the global recycling standard, I started saying we have to move from new fabric to recycled fabric, and being sure that when you buy a sustainable fabric, a sustainable item with recycled content, you want to be sure it's true. And I think that's why I think that label will gain more importance. And the other one is the cradle to cradle, that already at the beginning, before you design something, before it's produced, that you already think about how in the end, at the end of its life cycle, it will be put into its components, and how you can remake new clothes from it. And I think those two labels for me will be the ones which are the ones to watch out for and which will be important for the future.
Go ahead, sir.
Think about the sustainable supply chain. As we talked about, I think it's for the whole process. It's not only for the customer, it's also for producer. We work a lot with the factory. Actually, the worker is working in the worst environmental area. So that's why I'm using the certification that will put them in the better working environment. For example, natural lighting and natural ventilation. And to be honest, in the end of the day, certificate is just a piece of paper. And for all of the client, we try to pursue them using the criteria of the certificate. If you don't need to do your marketing, you don't need a certification. But if you have something to pursue, to follow, that's always better for your design.
Okay, we've heard twice now that you said it's only a piece of paper, and you said it's the status quo. It's not really the innovation, it's just doing things right. Yes?
Certificates are expensive. Too many of them out there. And when something is too expensive, it's not sustainable. So again, I think, in my opinion, if I have it my way, the best certificates out there, the true, the really meaningful ones out there, they should be free. Because it already comes at a cost for the manufacturers like us to adhere and to do everything right. It's already expensive. And the most sustainable way, if you're not economically, if you're not sustainable yourself, and you cannot be sustainable to the whole world. So I don't know, I'm a bit skeptical with certificates that we have to pay for.
May I say something? I work for a certification for fair trade. I agree that it's important that what you do with the certificates and what you actually do in your daily life at a factory and in production. However, if you look at H&M and many other labels and brands, they have their own sustainability things, and there's so much. As a consumer, you don't understand, even in the business, you don't know how sustainable they really are. They have maybe 1% they produce a conscious collection, and 99% is fast fashion made in the most abominable way. And we haven't even talked about social standards and how the workers are treated and how badly they're paid. So certification is necessary to set standards, and so that globally everyone talks about the same thing when we talk about social and environmental criteria. Then it shouldn't cost anything. Well, we can all wish for this, but the truth is every person who works to ensure those certificates and all those standards are actually met are working. They need to be paid for. Nothing is for free. And it's, in the end, the certification costs 3,000 francs, for example, for a global organic textile. It's a lot of money, but hey, you turn over millions, I mean hundreds of millions if you're a big brand. 3,000 francs is nothing. So I know that startups cannot, the brands, but even as a big factory, I think you need to say, okay, it's worth it. And I know it's a lot of different certifications, but then you produce cotton. Well, you can't use bluestine. Bluestine is interesting for outdoor wear. When you're having synthetics, where you need to make sure that all the pollution is prevented, that the chemicals are kept out of those garments. You make cotton, then maybe for you have the global organic textile, or you have fair trade cotton, or BCI. Let's not talk too much about that. Now let me explain. BCSI is a business standard. There are businesses that say they want to have good standards, which is nice. They try to enforce it, but there is no third-party assessment or auditing, and nothing happens if you don't comply. Whereas if you're in fair trade, you don't comply after the third time or after certain things, you are decertified. I mean, that's actual reliable information and data. Sorry.
This discussion is becoming really lively. I have to keep you in order. Didier first.
I think it's not such a hard topic. We did before without certificates, and it didn't work. So we clearly need somebody to manage. So in that respect, we got certified. We paid for it, and we helped all our suppliers to get it done. But based on the cradle to cradle, I think the biggest thing is we need to meet people that design and that develop, understand what are the principles behind all these certificates. How do you design in a way with sustainability at the core of what you're making? And I think that is what cradle to cradle does best. It really shifts how you think as somebody who's making something. So,
Patrick, you want to pick up that?
I think I can jump on that certificate. Yes, I fully agree. There are hundreds of certificates outside and on the shirts or whatever, and the consumer will see it and most likely does not understand. So we know from kind of the Hick Index that it's greenwashing. Is it bad? No, it's not, but it's just one certificate. So I think most of it's about efficiency and time saving and resources we can save. This can also start from the recycling things. From our side, we go on site, and with our color management, we go to colorists. So since the beginning, we had certified 10,000 of colorists. They know how to deal with that. And I mean, if you have a designer, he has an imagination of like a blue shirt, and if it goes to the producer, he will do a blue shirt. But is it the same blue shirt? No, most likely not. So we know the color management, then the color measurements and the recipes. So with our certificates, you can save 20% of water, and this is just one thing. And you have to care about that data, so the accurate data you will provide to the consumer. It's B2B and B2C, we should not forget. I mean, the brand want to save resources, but also the consumer asks for where are the clothes from? Who made that? It's not about 100% data, and you will not have 100% of transparency, but it's the approach of it, and you have to go there and to provide that. And this jumps into the Bommler platform where we have the transparency to go in as brand and say, hey, I want to invite all my suppliers. I want to show how they work, if they have child work, due diligence, etc., to provide that data. Because at the end, it's the consumer who buys your clothes or whatever. At the end, for our side, we are the experts on the apparel and textile industry, but it should be also food and electronic, etc. We saw that also from Vietnam, that is not only food, fashion and textile.
So there's a competition also among the certification standards, and there's a clear development, like you said. You have an example, I think, of how you deal with?
Yeah, I have an example, but first of all, I mean, the best case would be that all the garments would be sustainable, so we don't need these certificates and labels. But it's not the case, we know, and as well as for the public sector and for the people, as a private customer, it's important to know that something is labeled or has a certification to make me believe it's what I want in it. Mm-hmm. And like an example for me as a private person, I just wanted to buy a fairly produced and ecological and organic linen for the bed linen. And I didn't believe how hard it was for me, and I'm kind of an expert in it, to find such a simple piece of fabric, right? It took me couples of hours, and I tried on the internet with all the big wholesalers and all these like Migros and Coop and Manor and all this, and even I wrote to them, maybe they didn't label, but they have, and no, they didn't have. And finally I found, and I was so lucky when I received this. They produced it for me, so I had to wait a couple of weeks or months, I don't know. And then I received it, and there was a QR code, and I could track where, in which part, in which company it was produced, and it made me so lucky. But it was hard to get, and this shouldn't be the case.
It should be simpler. Sustainability should become a standard. It should be simpler. It will always develop. I just wanted to add a little bit. We've talked about army uniforms, and the city of Zurich was one of the first to label or to do a sustainable public procurement for uniforms for the public transport.
Police first.
Police first, and then transport.
Well, it depends if you speak of uniforms, or like for the police, it was the shirts. Okay. Which are really sustainable.
So maybe someday we will have a Gwand Fashion Award with uniforms here on stage. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we have.
Sorry to grab the mic again. If I found it interesting, you said it's difficult to find sustainable garments and textiles. May I please say again, there are some leaflets at the entrance. There are online search facilities like getchange.net. It is a card tool, a map tool for Switzerland, and you can look for clothing, for textiles, for linens, etc. And it will show you where you can buy them and which brands are sustainable. There is also Nachhaltig Leben, sustainableliving.ch, which has also a very good database or information. And there are shops now in various cities, such as Revolve and Glory, which have sustainable clothing. Fair Customer, for example, has bed linens, also made of organic cotton, GOTS certified. They are there, but it is difficult to find yet, but it's getting better. It's already a lot better than 10 years ago, right?
Yeah. The thing is, I wanted a red bed linen, and there are so many organic or fair bed linen, but not in red. So
I think I'll send you a red bed linen. Certified by Boehmer. Yes. Okay, we need to wrap up. And we have these ambitious goals by the IPCC to get carbon down as quickly as possible. We've all seen this summer the heat waves, the devastating agricultural impacts we have in Pakistan, also a textile producing country, big floods. It's becoming a visual emergency. So my question is, for a last round, is what gives you hope in this in this urgent situation, and what have you learned here, or what you think we need to learn from Vietnam or Vietnam from Switzerland? Yeah, what is your next step in this goal to get net zero, we call it, or sustainability, we call it, or cradle to cradle? It has different names, but actually we're all talking about getting back to a healthier planet.
Okay, we swap. Now you first.
I mean, what gives me hope is that people are more and more aware about policy coherence issues. Or, let's say, they get aware if there is contradiction in behavior of public sector politicians, and they get angry if they get aware that there is contradiction in the behavior. And this is a huge energy driving forward the things. I can tell of my own accessory activity. I'm in the Bern University of Applied Science, teaching public sector entities how to develop their sustainability concepts when buying. And at the same time, our own University of Applied Sciences did not have a strategy on buying stuff. And I told them, hey guys, this is not acceptable. I'm telling people how to improve on this, and our own school has no concept. I want to see now, in 6 months' time, a strategic concept of the University of Applied Science of Bern on buying their own stuff. And they did. So what I think is a real opportunity to make people clear what coherence, policy coherence means if you really want it.
Thank you.
So, when I first arrived here, I hear from a good friend of mine saying that Switzerland at the moment has a big drought. But it rained a few days ago, and actually 2 days, 3 days in a row, so that gave me hopes. That gave me a lot of hopes, right? And the fact that the topic about sustainability, about global changing, being more and more talked about, and being more and more noticed, that also gives me a lot of hope as well. So definitely every single of us is a consumer. And if we educated ourselves, if we be more aware about what we do, about how we live our life, in a new way of really just moderation. Moderation is the best way. Then hopefully, slowly, we will be able to minimize, and if we are lucky, we can reverse the impact on the government. Not on the government, sorry, on the climate. So I think us, really, humanity, we, at every single individual, really give me hopes. My friends, my family, my colleagues, all of you here, everybody is giving me hopes.
The global Gwand family or the Victoria
everybody.
family?
Thank you so much.
I think there are a few things that give me hope. I think, for example, we have the Climate Fresh people over there that are constantly educating people. The fact that veganism in Switzerland is rising and vegetarianism is rising. The fact that research recently shown that individuals and their purchasing and their behavior have about 25% impact. Correct me if the number's wrong, that's what I remembered. But we have a big impact, each and every one of us. And one of the things that really gives me great satisfaction is that I teach already for many years, and I'm starting to wear out my colleagues. They're getting tired of me. They're finally facing that I might have something to say. My students get it. My colleagues, slowly. But when we dress our children and when we do photo shoots and I address an 8-year-old, they get it. They know what I'm talking about. It's no mystery that if you buy organic, you save the bees. It sounds ridiculous and they completely understand. So that gives me hope.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can continue with that. I mean, I think that then when we want to change the textile sector, we have to do it with everyone together, right? It's not just the industries, it's also the consumer. And here,
sustainable life together, huh?
Yes, exactly. And here, I think we are not, there's a need of a social tipping point, that the change of minds in the people, and we are not near to it yet, unfortunately. But it's very important that we talk about this issue all the time, like the Gwand Festival does now, so thank you very much for that. And also, I think to overcome one of the problems that we have overproduction, we have too many clothes, too many textiles in the production. And to overcome this, probably from the production side, we need produce less in a better quality and to higher wages, which means for the consumers, we consume less, but probably our favorite pieces, we consume less in a better quality and pay more for it. And people must be ready to do this shift, to do this change. And it's not an easy thing to bring everyone to this mind shift, but I think we need role models, we need influencers, and at the end we all are influencers and role models. We should be, and like within our friendships and our communities, we can try to convince and make a difference, and they will do the same, and so that's the way we have to go on as well. And yeah, talk about it.
So if it's true that we're connected to everybody via 6 relationships, we only need to talk to 6 people, or is my math wrong? Maybe we shouldn't talk to the same 6 all the time and continue. Tuan.
My hope that is most of the how to say client come to us, they asking about the certification because they're client. They said, hey, you export your product to US, then you need LEED or H or Lotus, which is a green building certification system. So I wish that is later on, all of the factory, all of the manufacturer will be pursue the certification by themselves. Even they don't need it to export their products, because in the end of the day, it's all about human. So if they change their commitment, they change their, behavior, then it's going to be better for themselves. And also, like Ms. Ling mentioned, they eat their own food. So it's all about that.
It's about humans, it's about relationships,
yeah.
And we talked in a side discussion about making this factory work more attractive again,
yeah.
Which appears to be a problem. And if you can eat the fruit in the factory, it might be one of the little steps to give this work more value. But we need to pay it, and we need to, less is more means, it could also mean making people happier who are the producers themselves. Patrick, I'll leave you the final word, or otherwise I'll pick it up at the end.
Good. Okay, yeah, let's do that. I think my hope is, and I would like to start that with just an information and like a journey. So as the world leader of color lifecycle management, we certify around 80 companies in Vietnam. So this, for us, this is just the start, and these companies work for the biggest brands in the world, like Target, Under Armour, etc. They are big companies. I think in the future, and this is my hope, and I see that we talk about the small brands. The small brands, they really think, they have the attitude of the sustainability and all that stuff. So this is what gives me hope to bring them all together and they will be more in the future. We will be more than the big ones that have not that influence that we have today. So the small ones make the difference in the future, I think.
Let me just jump in there. Yesterday we had a little panel here of such small, very innovative brings. One of them broke out in tears. A bigger company sponsored their presence here, and she was so relieved, and she was so happy to see others. And these people are sometimes working a lot on their own, and so I think we all need to celebrate this effort and give them the strength, because that's what's needed to go mainstream afterwards.
Yes, before I forgot, the reason why we are here is one small brand, Ananda Zurich, which makes out of Pinadex from pineapple leaves the handbags. This is a really nice story which we want to cover also in the future and what we want to talk about. We made a blog with her, made an interview. These are really interesting stories we want to cover in the future. And she's from Switzerland, Vietnam as well, but they're from Switzerland, and these are the stories we really want to cover about.
So Rachel, if you're out there, thank you very much for bringing him and a lot of people from Vietnam together. I think it's an excellent sign of hope. Yes, that these small initiatives can grow and spark for a larger, the mainstream that we need. You want to add to that? No? No. Okay. So thank you very, very much. I feel inspired, and I hope we can spark on and have more discussions, maybe more technical discussions or connections. That's why we're offering drinks, or with the thanks of the Embassy of Vietnam. We'll have a B2B, but also B2C gathering, and please feel free to join one of us three, Didem, myself, and Isabella, but you of course talk to the others as well. We make a little guided tour through the festival, and then we'll have a drink together and hopefully do the walk to the talk. Thank you so much.